So far we have looked at the graphical methods, the chase and the level and the mix strategies. And now let's look at some other approaches, like mathematical approaches. And your textbook spends a lot of time on what is called transportation method or transportation method of linear programming. Now there is a general form of linear programming that we can now set up in Excel. So the transportation model is not really that useful. First of all, you have to set it up as a table, and it's a lot of computation, and you can only use that approach for a small problem. Whereas if you set it up as a linear programming problem in Solver, then you are guaranteed the best solution, and it includes all the different costs that we have already discussed. So I'm not going to cover transportation method, so we'll skip that and we'll go straight into solver model. And I have a video for solver model. You need to look into that. So we'll now move on to the next topic in this slide. So make sure that you watch the solver model video. Now, aggregate planning in services, there are a couple of things that we have to remember. In services, inventory is not going to be part of the planning situation because there is no inventory involved in services. So the most important aspect, capacity in services, is labor. So you have the labor, controlling cost of labor is the most critical aspect of aggregate planning in services. So we have to schedule the labor hours, and we need to be able to quickly respond because we can't have inventory. So when the demand increases, we should be able to quickly schedule the necessary labor hours to meet the demand. So you need to have on-call labor for unexpected spikes in demand. And flexibility in labor skills, worker skills, is necessary. So if you have completely demarcated skill level, so one group of workers can only work on one thing, another group of workers can only work on another thing, then it becomes more complicated for scheduling purposes. So each worker should be well trained and be able to handle many different needs. So that's what flexibility in skill levels and flexibility in the hours of work, these are the important requirements of aggregate planning in services. So here are some 5 scenarios that your textbook lists. And finally, the last topic in this chapter is revenue management. Revenue management is specific to companies where the price point will have a direct impact on the demand generated. So if and then one more requirement is that very small variable cost, and then the demand can be segmented for different price points. Especially in airlines industry, you'll see that there are different price points that are allowed. Like if you book 2 weeks in advance, you get one price. If you just walk up to the counter, you get a different price. And if you book through web, the internet, you get a different price. So 2 people traveling, sitting next to each other, may be paying very different fares. So the fares are adjusted to maximize net revenue, and they've spent a lot of time analyzing what would be the expected demand at different price points and try to maximize the total net revenue. So let's look at an example. So here is an example in a graphical format. Suppose if this is your y-axis is your total demand or sales. So this is a hotel example, and the price is given on the x-axis. So this is the variable cost, and of course if you have 0 as the price, you'll have 100% occupancy, or all your rooms will be occupied. And then if you price it way too high, then none of your rooms will be occupied. So here is what the current price level is. If you charge $150 per night, then the demand is 50 rooms. So price times 50 rooms gives you the total revenue generated minus $15 of variable cost, gives you the net revenue of 67.50. You see, at this price point, what happens is that this is the amount of money that is left on the table, because people would be willing to, these are the people who are willing to pay more than 150. Now, if you had less than 115, these are the people that have been passed up. So somehow, if we can bifurcate the prices, so maybe you can set up a price, one price here and one price there, and try to collect that part of the money that's now being ignored into the revenue equation. Would that be beneficial? So that's what revenue management does. So here is an example. Suppose you have 2 price points. You have $200, 30 rooms, $100, 60 rooms, and then you calculate it through, you get 8,100 net revenue. In the previous case, the net revenue was 6,750. So now when you, instead of charging 150, if you have 2 price points, $100 and $200, then your net revenue is 8,100. We'll work out an example of this in the next video. So these are the caveats. So for the revenue management to work, you have to have multiple price structures, and you must be able to estimate what the demand will be. The forecast should be accurate, and the changes in the demand and the price break should be logical, because if customers feel that they are being fleeced, or one person is paying $200, the other person is paying $100, and they feel that it is unfair. So there must be some fairness built into the pricing structure. Like if you book 2 weeks in advance, you get a price break. But if you don't book 2 weeks in advance, you have to pay a premium, and that kind of pricing structure is understandable. There is an inherent fairness in it. But if it is arbitrary, then it becomes problematic.